Hello, and thank you for joining us for some highlights from a recent public event we hosted, Becoming the New Us, Advancing Immigrant Families in Rural America. I am Janet Topolsky. I'm Executive Director of the Community Strategies Group at the Aspen Institute. Aspen CSG connects, motivates, and equips local leaders to build more prosperous regions and to advance those living on the economic margins while they do so. We work with community-based leaders in urban and rural places across the country who are facing persistent and emerging economic and social challenges and opportunities. Over the past few months, we've partnered with the Carsey School of Public Policy at the University of New Hampshire, and with support from the Annie E. Casey Foundation, we've worked together to explore the growing incidence of immigrant and refugee families in rural communities in the United States, and to examine the challenges facing both the immigrant families and their rural communities. Aspen CSG has also identified some groundbreaking efforts in rural communities that are helping both immigrant families and their rural communities do better together. Immigrant families are like any family in their hopes and aspirations. They're looking for a place to live where they can find a job that has an affordable cost of living and that offers a good quality of life where they can raise a family. But why would we focus on immigrant families in rural America? It's because immigrant families in rural America represent both a challenge and an opportunity. They represent a challenge because really any attempt to address the growing economic inequality in our country requires that we focus on rural immigrant families. Research by our colleagues Beth Mattingly and Andrew Schaefer at the Carsey School shows that rural immigrant families, including those with parents that are working full-time, emerge as poorer than native-born families in rural communities and poorer than their counterpart immigrant families in urban communities. In other words, they are among the very poorest of our nation's poor. But immigrant families in rural America also represent an opportunity. It's important to know that 31% of the net new residents in rural America from the years 2012 to 2014 were born in another country. 31% born in another country. In rural communities where population decline is a major concern, the influx of immigrants can represent an opportunity for revitalization if those communities see that opportunity and seize that opportunity.
I still remember my parents struggling when we got here and how difficult it was for them to assimilate and acculturate to this new community. And so I remember my mother trying to read to me and working so hard on her English just to read these 3-letter books that I was getting from school. And I remember my father working extremely hard to build a home for us, and that I didn't understand that at the time, and now I do, but it just transferred over to me, because it was always a sense of encouragement and positivity, and it didn't matter where we went, we were going to make a home and we were going to build it, and it was together.
Immigrant community is very diverse. It's not monolithic. So we have great diversity of mixed status families. We have grandparents and parents who've been here for a decade or longer. We have those who have fled violence and persecution. We have high-skilled STEM immigrants. And we have young people who have grown up in the United States who, despite their uncertain status, have engaged in the highest forms of civic engagement, really advocated for themselves in very vibrant and interesting ways.
We have a number of immigrants that have been in our community about 10 to 12 years. Most of them have come for a variety of reasons, primarily economic, job opportunities, also a very safe and familiar place coming from rural mountains in Mexico or Central America. So even the name of the state, Colorado, really is inviting to lots of the families.
The families within the community that we work with definitely come upon a lot of barriers and a lot of struggles. To begin, they come, sometimes it's not even planned, and so they come from a different country and automatically are faced with just everything is absolutely new to them. So they have this trauma already, and to build off of that, they don't know the language and they're struggling for housing possibly, and they do it all of good intention, of course, because they want to bring a good opportunity for their children. But what gets lost is that they're so focused on what their kids need that they forget about themselves. And so they don't advocate for themselves. They don't reach out to finish their dreams. They just want to help their children. And that transfers on over to the children, and sometimes that can be worse.
This is not an easy task. These are challenging issues, and immigrants themselves face a lot of challenges in rural communities. There's a lack of access to legal services, and community-based organizations don't have enough resources to support the capacity that they need to serve the communities around them. Immigrants are excluded from health care, and they also lack transportation in order to access better opportunities like workforce opportunities and English language acquisition. And so I think there is so much to learn from our community-based organizations that will also be speaking really specifically about the innovations that they've been engaged in rural communities.
One of the things we learned when we went door to door about the families that have been here a while is they still feel very vulnerable and isolated from their neighbors even. Many of them don't live in long established neighborhoods. The community in the Roaring Fork Valley of mobile home parks, we probably have 15 to 20 relatively small mobile home parks, between 30 and 50 trailers. And many of the families that come in, they don't know where their neighbors are from, and so they really are isolated. And as part of their settling in the community, it's getting to know their neighbors, trusting each other, and building networks within that neighborhood that often is a food desert from a grocery store perspective, and also a resource desert from community services. So we bring a mobile preschool into that low-income neighborhood and offer the services for free. The only catch is we ask the parents to volunteer, and they're more than willing to volunteer, and it really, really resonates with our community.
In 2005, the governor of Minnesota at that time was very excited about the home ownership rate within Minnesota. It was at 73%. However, the bad part of that is 77% were white households, and only 42% of minority households had were homeowners. So he actually challenged housing professionals to change that disparity and try to create more diverse households. They created the Emerging Market Home Ownership Initiative, which we became a part of. So the ultimate goal of that plan was to really create homeowners. So we were able to get funding for 3 years to look at different ways of creating homeowners in Southwest Minnesota that were diverse. What we found out was there are a lot of different reasons why homeownership may or may not work within different communities.
Community engagement is key. You really need to listen to your community, talk to stakeholders, talk to those that are impacted by this, the immigrants and refugees themselves.
And what we really did is we actually went out into the community. So we have a person that all they do is go out to do community building and engagement. They meet with the people. They ask questions on what is happening, what the needs are, and how can we meet those needs. We go into the local employers, we go to English as a second language courses, and we actually meet out in that community. If we were to ask people to come to our offices, it just would not happen. So same with any services that we provide. We would actually go into the communities and provide those services. So much of my advisor's work is done out into the community.
Our approach really stems from listening intensely and deeply in folks' homes. So we hired community organizers as part of a project to understand what are the hopes and dreams of the families that move here and immigrate here. So we go into their homes with bicultural, bilingual community organizers and say, why are you here? What are your hopes and dreams? And what are you willing to work for? And as out of that process, the answer is typically, I came here for my family and for my children to have a better life. easier life than I. I'd like to lose a little weight and learn English, and of course I'm willing to work hard. So we basically responded to that, and now we run 7 very integrated programs aimed at early childhood education for their children and at adult basic education and stepping stones towards community college courses if they're interested, or just in civic engagement after they feel more settled in the community.
Grant makers are really interested in ensuring that when they're engaged in grant making, they're inclusive of immigrants, recognizing that doing so impacts the overall well-being of communities, children and families. And I think that we have to be really clear about what that means. It's not a zero-sum game. So it doesn't mean that you're advantaging one group over another. In fact, it's the opposite message. It's really about when you work collaboratively, you work cohesively, you create vibrant and safe communities, everyone gains. And that's what shared prosperity is about.
We started the initiative in 2008. Before 2009, approximately about 81% of the people who went through homeownership services through our organization were white households. From 2009 until now, it is at 53% are white households. Specifically in the last 2 years, 56% of the households that we serve are diverse households. And specifically in our financial capabilities program, it's 81% is diverse households today.
78% of the kids in our 2014 preschool class on our bus at the end of kindergarten are at or above grade average of their peers. So only 22% are at any sort of struggling level that might need some intervention. And we feel like that's a great comparison with kids that have maybe had a formal preschool setting, because ours is, 2 days a week, 2.5 hours a day, much less time than your average Anglo preschool kid, but very high impact because their parents are so engaged in it, and we're in their neighborhood, and our bicultural teachers and bilingual teachers go into the homes as well. So it's not just in the preschool bus, but we do home visits with our teachers and really get to work with the whole family around early childhood development.
Understanding that shared prosperity is a hallmark of our country. And immigrants make outsized contributions. They always have. There are more consumers, more small business owners, more employees. They're caregivers for our aging communities. They're caregivers for our children. They're more taxpayers. They're more for everyone.
It's difficult, but then when you see them shine, when you see them go out there and get a job and turn in their resume, or when you get a phone call after an interview from them and they are just so excited and thrilled, it's motivating. And I do it for them. It's great.